So, welcome back. If you do follow me, you'll have seen obviously that I've done the engine build on my T300 Tiger engine, not T400, whatever you want to call it. This is a 95 Tiger I've built obviously the engine with the high compression pistons. I had a few issues obviously once I'd built it. I got it running without too much of an issue. Then I noticed the carb started leaking, a few other bits and bobs, no other leaks from the engine, but the carbs were leaking, so I had to have them off 2 or 3 times. Got it all back together, ready to balance the carbs, and I noticed the seals had started to leak on the carbs. I'd had them apart. The bike's 20 odd, nearly 30 years old, so it doesn't really surprise me. And obviously with whether it's ethanol fuel, I don't really know. I'm not going to get into that. So what I've decided to do is pull the carbs and put a new complete seal, O-ring seal kit on it, base gaskets, everything like that. So this is just going to be a very quick few minute video just showing you how to do it. The kit I got from Sprint Manufacturing. I'm not promoting them, but that's just where I got them from. They're about 45 quid, I think, something like that, for the complete three complete seal kits for each carburetor. So what I'll do is I'll cut the video off and I'll go through them, and I'll show you the stages of where we're going to start from. I've done 2 of them already, so I'm just going to do the last one now, but I thought I'd video this one and show you what's going on. As you can see, the carbs, obviously, they're already off the bike. So there's a seal in the top. There's a couple of seals inside as well, and a couple of seals on the bottom on the float bowls, inside the float bowls as well. So I'll come back to those in a second. What I'm going to start by doing is removing the 2, mine have got Allen bolts in because they've been replaced before, the 2 bolts off the bottom of the float bowl. So we're going to remove that, and then I'll show you the next. With the float bowl removed, you can see the float inside. Obviously, some people do get an issue with the little valve in there. I know these are clean, it wasn't leaking from that, so I'm not too worried about that. This is one of the seals we're going to be replacing here. Because it's only bolted in 2 corners, this seal does need to be in fairly good condition. Mine have just, I'm guessing they've just gone a bit flat where they've been on and off a couple of times, so this is why we're putting new ones on. To remove the plastic unit here, you don't need an awful lot of force. They're just held in, it's just pushed in at the back there, and there's a little O-ring just inside here as well, but I'll just take that off and show you. So you just literally just pop that out. As you can see, there's 2 O-rings there on the float unit, which are going to replace in a minute. The next stage is to remove the main jet. What we're going to need to do with that, because there is one inside here, I'll show you that in a second as we go through. Actually, I'll just tip it over and show you. There's one where the float chamber, basically the emulsion tube, sits inside there. We're going to pull that unit out because there's one that sits on the bottom of there as well, which is supplied with the kit, and it does explain inside the kit relatively easy on how to do it. What we're going to do, we're going to have to remove this. It does say to just take that out a couple of turns and give it a slight knock, and it'll drop the emulsion tube out. I've got another way to do that rather than cause any damage to this. I found another bolt that fits in, and I'll show you as I go. One thing you will need to remove before you knock the emulsion tube out, as you can see, I've just found a bolt with a thread, the correct thread in it. I haven't pushed that in too far because obviously the main jet needle's in there. You need to remove the cap with the diaphragm and the spring inside it. Obviously this will give you a good opportunity to check all the diaphragm, make sure everything's in good condition. You'll be able to check all the needle and obviously see where everything's seated. If you are doing any sort of carb setup, that you want to adjust the carbs for any particular reason, I'll go through in a minute with what mine's set to, just because of the way I've got my bike. So once you've taken the 2 screws out the top cap, as you can see, this is the little O-ring we're going to be replacing here, which does sit on top. I'll show you in a minute. Just a little bit careful when you take it out. So there's a little bit of pressure on that spring. Just put that to one side. So with the carbs, if I can stand them upright, bear with me. So with the carbs stood upright, as you can see, this is where the little O-ring sits in the top. Just having that little recess there. We'll be able to put that back in a minute. Just very gently lift out the diaphragm. Obviously, just making sure obviously there's no damage to the needle or anything like that. We'll clean that off in a second before we put it back in. So the next thing we're going to need to do, it's not that easy to see. Let me just grab a screwdriver. There. Just down inside the carb there, you can see the emulsion tube in there. That needs to come out because it holds the the slide guide into place. That guide needs to come out because there is an O-ring on the bottom of that that also needs to be replaced. So just bear with me. What we're going to do, as you can see, I've got the bolt in there which is screwed into where the main jet screw goes. I'm just going to give this a bit of a gentle tap. I'll try and do it when I'm videoing, but it might not work. But not, I can't do it while I'm videoing. I'll back to you in a sec. Okay. As you can see, I've just gently tapped that through and it's pushed the emulsion tube out. So now what you're going to be able to do, if I just take that bolt out of there, what you're going to be able to do is stick your finger in and just push up on the emulsion tube guide. Oh, sorry, the slide guide, he says. Hang on. Okay, typically all of the other runs came out with just a little bit of finger pressure. That one needed a bit more oomph to get it out. As you can see, that just slides out and it'll bring the emulsion tube with it. Oh, just trying to get that in focus. So I'll pull that out. Just put that to one side for a minute, and as you can see, there's a little O-ring just inside there that just pops out. Oh, get rid of that in a second. That actually sits on the bottom of the slide there in the recess. As you can see on the emulsion tube, there's a little bit of green on there, so I'm going to give that a clean out. So if you're taking all these apart, if you have carburetor issues for any reason, knock this out to make sure all those breather tubes inside that emulsion tube are nice and clean. It's not furry. It should be a nice copper colour. I'm not quite sure why mine's gone like that, but I'm going to give everything a good clean before I slide it all back together, which I will catch you back in a minute. So with that all nice and clean, I don't know if you can see that. Oops, sorry, a bit close. There's a flat edge. It's like a recess cutout on the emulsion tube, which when it goes back in, I'm not sure if this will pick it up. There's a small pin just inside the very bottom of the tube where it sits. Make sure it does line up with that when you push it all the way in. A little bit of WD-40 just to help it slide in. But obviously if it doesn't line up with that, it won't go seat all the way down, and it has to seat all the way to the bottom. As you can see, these are all the old ones I've taken out. I'm sort of doing them as I go. There should be 5 seals in total for the O-rings that we're replacing in this kit, plus the float bowl gasket. As you can see, the first O-ring is that one I've put on there on the bottom of the slide guide. So I'm just going to pop all that back in and then I'll come back to the next bit. So with the guide back in, as you can see, it should seat all the way to the bottom there. Obviously then it's you're ready to put the main jet back in. So with all that back in, we're now ready to put the slide back in. Obviously I'm going to give this a bit of a clean, now taking it out. Obviously you can see there's quite a bit of gunk and crap on there, so I'm going to remove all of that before I put it in, just to make sure obviously the slide and the throttle works correctly as it should do. If you do drop the needle out, which I'll do now, whoops, there we go. So if you do drop the needle out, or if you're doing any adjustments, when somebody says about the clip on the needle, as you can see, mine are all set dead in the middle on each carb. I haven't adjusted anything with that. That's exactly how they came. Somebody had updated this and set it up relatively well before I got it. I've made a couple of adjustments to it purely because of what I've done to the engine. But don't worry, if that does drop out, it just slots in. Just make sure the little top hat that's there goes back on top of that once you put it all back together. Okay, so let me just put all this back together and I'll come back. Couple of things obviously you check before buttoning everything back up again. Obviously I'm going to put the seal on in a second. One thing you should look at, obviously, if you are having carburetor problems, just keep an eye on this. Have a look at this diaphragm. Make sure there's no small pinholes in it. Just gently stretch it out. Have a good look around it. Only if you are having carburetor problems, that's what I'm saying. I haven't, so I know they're all fine. So we're going to put the little O-ring back in, which is this one. So I'm going to drop that little O-ring back on there. And then obviously we can put the cap with the spring back on. I can't do it one-handed, unfortunately, so I'll get back to you in a second, and then we'll put the bottom half back on. Okay, so the 2 new seals are on the float bowls, on the floats, and they're all fitted back in. You just very gently with these, because they are quite old, just very gently pop them down, just very gently with a screwdriver. Just make sure they're clipped in. Don't use too much force. Obviously use a bit of WD-40 on there just to help them go back in. The next thing I'm going to be talking about now is the mixture screws. Now, because my carbs are heavily upjetted, I believe the standard main jets are something like 103 or 105, something along those lines. Mine are actually run. I'm not sure that's 100% correct because I can't seem to find the correct settings on what the main jet should really be. I've searched all over and can't see it. Mine are actually running, and they were like this when I got it. I don't know if the phone will focus on that, but as you can see, my two outer jets are 125s. The center is a 120. Just to they're not all the same, unfortunately, so obviously to keep a bit of temperature at the middle one. Now the mixture screws, there is a very, very tiny little seal on this. Now the mixture screws on mine, when I got it, I had a few small issues, reset it back up, and I did set them to I'm just trying to remember, it was two turns out from fully in on the two outer ones and 2.5 on the center one. Now, although it suited it before, now I've put the high compression pistons in, there seems to be a lot more air draw through, and it was a bit funny to start, so I reset those. So now these are 2.5 on the 2.5 turns on the outside carburetors and 3 on the center. These are the idle mixture screws, and it starts right away, starts absolutely perfect. So that's how I'm going to leave it. Obviously, if there's any further issues along the line once I start riding it, then I may have to come back and do some more adjustments, but I'll try and see how it goes once I've ridden it. The ride, I'm not really interested in a dyno run. I probably will put it on one, just for my curiosity, but yeah, if there's any other issues further along the line, it's more rideability for me than anything. But yeah, so those will now be set at like I say, 2.5 turns out from fully in, and 3 in the middle one. So I'll just quickly screw them out and show you how that's made up, just in case you've never seen them before. So this is just to show you how the idle mixture screw is set up. Obviously you've got the screw there, there's a small spring on it there, the little washer goes on, and that's magnetic, and obviously the little seal goes on the bottom. Again, this is one of the seals I'm going to be replacing, so we'll get that done, and then we'll go just back to the last stage, which is putting the base. Okay, so just the last part of the video. So the new seal is on the base. Again, like I said, there's only 2 screws that hold it in place, so it has to be a fairly good seal because there's no pressure, there's not a lot of pressure on it. It only has those 2 screws holding it down. Like I said, with the mixture screw here, when I say obviously 2 turns, 2 or 3 turns or whatever you're going to set yours to, obviously turn it in with the correct size screwdriver, turn it all the way to the bottom, so turn it all the way clockwise. When you get to feel any resistance at the bottom, do not force it. Once it stops, you've used very, very light pressure. Once it stops, that is it. It seats on a rubber O-ring, as I showed you. Don't force it past that, because you will either tear the O-ring or you'll get an incorrect reading, obviously, when you're trying to set it back out, because there can be a quarter of a turn can make the difference of it running correctly or running poorly. Like I said, I've done this a few times. Different bikes. I used to have enduro bikes in the past, and they were very, very delicate because they were single carbs. Like I say, mine are set to 2.5, 2 full 2.5 turns on the outer carbs and 3 out on the center carb, just because of the way it's set up. Hopefully this has been an informative video for you, and it give you the confidence, if you have got issues with your own carburetors, to either reseal them, if you've got leaks, or maybe change some sort of setup, or even just to strip and clean some of the parts I've shown you to get your bike running correctly. Hopefully that's I'm hoping I shouldn't have any issues with it now, and hopefully the next video will be a video of me actually out on it once we've got some sunny weather, well, slightly warmer weather, it doesn't have to be sunny, and I'll do a full walk around of everything obviously that I've done to it, just to show you what's going on. Again, thanks very much for listening, and I'll catch you again.